The Silent Exodus. The Galactic Union had always considered humans to be a curiosity. A young species from a relatively insignificant blue planet in the spiral arm of an ordinary galaxy, humans had burst onto the interstellar scene with an enthusiasm that both amused and annoyed the elder races. While the Vrexians had spent millennia perfecting their teleportation technology, and the Zolari had evolved natural telepathy over countless generations, humans were newcomers who charged forward with what other species considered a reckless determination. They're like children, High Counselor Drex of the Vrexians often remarked during Union gatherings, brilliant in their own way, but ultimately primitive. The Union's dismissive attitude toward humanity was a poorly disguised secret. In formal meetings, humans were treated with diplomatic courtesy, but in private chambers, elder species often spoke of them as a temporary phenomenon, a species that would either mature into something more refined or burn itself out trying. What no one in the Union acknowledged, however, was how deeply the galactic community had come to rely on those primitive humans and their unpredictable innovations. Human-designed quantum communication relays had revolutionized interstellar messaging. Their adaptable medical nanites had been adopted by nearly every major medical facility in Union space. Their unique approach to artificial gravity had made space travel more efficient than it had been in the previous 3 millennia. On a clear day in the galactic standard calendar, the harbinger of crisis came not with alarms or warnings, but with silence. It began with a single human trading post in the Centauri sector, normally a hub of activity, suddenly going quiet. No distress signals, no messages, no departure notices, just emptiness. Within 3 standard days, every human outpost, colony, embassy, and vessel had vanished from Union space. The exodus was so perfectly coordinated that not a single human was left behind. Their ships were gone from harbors, their representatives absent from councils, their traders missing from markets. Humanity had disappeared without a sound, probably retreated to their homeworld for some internal matter. Zolarian Queen Diplomat Shea theorized at the first emergency meeting. Humans are prone to dramatic gestures. The Union leaders nodded in agreement, unwilling to admit the unease that had settled over them. The departure was classified as a temporary human cultural regression, and business continued as usual, or at least they tried to make it continue. The first sign of trouble appeared in the Proxima sector, where the quantum communication relay, designed and maintained exclusively by human engineers, began to fail. Messages that once traveled instantaneously across light years now arrived with delays, corrupted data, or not at all. "We can reverse engineer it," the Vrexian technicians assured their leaders. "Human technology is rudimentary compared to ours." Yet after weeks of the finest Vrexian minds examining the relay, they were no closer to understanding its core functionality. The principles seemed sound, but there was something in the human approach, some intuitive leap, that eluded them. As the communication network degraded, the next crisis emerged. The adaptive medical nanites, which had saved billions of lives across the Union, began to fail without their regular updates from human medical servers. Hospitals across 27 sectors reported rising mortality rates as treatments became less effective. "This is unacceptable," Elder Kiv of the Medusan Conclave announced during the second emergency meeting. "We must establish contact with Earth immediately." But all attempts to reach the human homeworld were met with silence. The once vibrant blue planet had erected some form of barrier that Union sensors couldn't penetrate. Exploration vessels that approached were redirected by automated defense systems, non-lethal but utterly effective. By the 3rd month after the human departure, the Union was facing a cascading series of crises. The artificial gravity technology that powered everything from personal transporters to massive city platforms began to falter. Trade routes that had relied on human navigational charts became treacherous as stellar data went unupdated. Food production systems designed by human agricultural specialists began to yield diminishing returns. "We never realized," whispered Counselor Vex of the Etherean Dominion during a private session with other elder race representatives, how much our daily existence had come to depend on them. It was a humbling admission. For centuries, the Union had patronized humans, viewing their contributions as minor conveniences rather than essential foundations. Now, as those foundations crumbled, the proud elder races were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had built their modern galactic society on human innovation without ever truly valuing the innovators. 6 months into what was now being called the human silence, the Union convened its most significant assembly in 5 centuries. Representatives from all 500 member species gathered at the ancient meeting grounds on Harmonium Prime. The enormous amphitheater, carved from living crystal a millennia ago, had never felt so tense. High Elder Sorix of the Vrexians, the nominal head of the Union, addressed the assembly with uncharacteristic humility. "We face an unprecedented crisis," his voice echoed across the crystal chamber. "The departure of humanity has revealed vulnerabilities in our society that none of us foresaw. Systems we took for granted are failing. Technologies we depend upon are degrading. Our galactic community is unraveling." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Such an admission from the usually proud Vrexians was shocking. "We have spent decades, centuries for some of us, looking down upon humans as lesser beings," continued Sorix. "We have accepted their gifts while dismissing their worth. We have benefited from their presence while denying them equal standing. And now we are paying the price for our arrogance." Queen Diplomatia of the Zolari rose from her crystalline seat, her telepathic voice reaching into the minds of all present. "We must locate them," she projected, her thoughts tinged with urgency. "We must understand why they left and what it would take for them to return." Elder Kiv of the Medusans stood next, his serpentine body swaying with agitation. "And if they refuse? If they have abandoned us permanently? What then?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. The Union had never seriously considered a future without human participation. They had taken for granted that humans, eager for acceptance, would always be there, creating, innovating, supporting the galactic infrastructure while asking for little in return. "Then," said Sorix gravely, "we must prepare for the collapse of the Union as we know it." The assembly erupted in voices. Denial, anger, bargaining. The stages of grief played out across the galactic representatives as they confronted the possibility that their golden age of prosperity might be ending. In the midst of the chaos, a small, previously unnoticed representative from the Archivist Collective approached the central podium. The Archivists were an ancient and respected, but politically neutral species who documented galactic history without interfering in it. "I may know where to find them," the Archivist said, her voice barely audible above the din. The chamber fell silent, all attention turning to the diminutive figure. "Before they left, a human archivist entrusted me with coordinates," she continued. "Coordinates and a message." "What message?" demanded Sorix. The archivist looked around the chamber, her eyes reflecting the light of the crystal walls. "The message was simple," she said. "When the galaxy realizes what it has lost, come find us. We'll be waiting to see if you've learned anything." Part 2. The Desperate Search. The coordinates provided by the archivist pointed to a remote sector beyond the outer rim, an area the Union had deemed uninhabitable and never bothered to explore. A delegation was formed immediately. Representatives from each of the elder races, along with specialists in human culture and negotiation. "We must approach with humility," advised the archivist as the mission prepared to depart. "Humans value authenticity above all. They will know if your contrition is merely performance." The journey to the coordinates was fraught with difficulties. The Union's most advanced ships, many incorporating human design elements, began to experience cascading system failures the farther they traveled from established routes. 3 vessels had to turn back, their life support systems compromised. The remaining ships limped forward, a humbling experience for species accustomed to dominance. Meanwhile, conditions throughout Union space deteriorated rapidly. The quantum communication network collapsed entirely, isolating entire sectors from one another. Medical facilities were overwhelmed as treatments failed, and new diseases emerged that the now degraded nanites couldn't combat. Trade ground to a halt as artificial gravity failures made cargo transport increasingly dangerous. On Vrexia Prime, riots broke out when food shortages became severe. The Zolari collective mind fractured into competing factions as telepathic amplifiers, another human innovation, began to malfunction. The Medusan healing pools, which had relied on human-designed purification systems, became toxic, causing a health crisis throughout their realm. The proud elder races, who had looked down upon humanity for centuries, were being brought to their knees by the absence of those they had dismissed. After 90 grueling days of travel, the Union delegation finally reached the coordinates. What they found astonished them. A massive Dyson swarm surrounded a blue-white star, efficiently capturing its energy. Thousands of habitats and stations formed an intricate network, pulsing with activity. Human ships, more advanced than any the Union had previously seen, patrolled the perimeter. This was no refugee camp. This was a thriving civilization, built in just 6 months. "How is this possible?" whispered Sorix as they approached. Even with their innovation, they couldn't have built all this so quickly. The answer became clear as they were escorted to the central habitat. Humans hadn't started from scratch. They had been preparing this sector for decades, secretly building their new home while maintaining their presence in Union space. The Union delegation was received in a vast chamber with walls displaying real-time images of stars and nebula. At the center stood a group of humans, their expressions neutral but watchful. "Welcome to New Horizon," said a woman who introduced herself as Director Chen. "We've been expecting you." "You knew we would come?" asked Sorix, struggling to maintain his diplomatic composure in the face of such unexpected development. "We knew the Union would eventually realize what our absence meant," Chen replied. "Though I admit, we didn't expect it would happen quite so quickly." Queen Diplomatia stepped forward, her telepathic voice carefully modulated to convey respect. "Why did you leave? If there were grievances, why not bring them to the council?" A soft, bitter laugh escaped Chen's lips. "We spent centuries bringing our grievances to the council. We were patted on the head, told to be patient, assured that eventually we would be granted equal standing. All while you built your societies on our innovations, claimed our ideas as merely refinements of your own concepts, and excluded us from the benefits of full Union membership." The humans around her nodded in agreement, their eyes reflecting decades of accumulated frustration. "We didn't leave on a whim," continued another human, introducing himself as Dr. Okafor. "We left because we realized that no matter what we contributed, the elder races would never see us as equals. We would always be the clever pets, useful but not respected." The Union representatives shifted uncomfortably, unable to deny the truth in these words. "We come seeking your return," said Elder Kid finally, his serpentine form bowing lower than any Medusan had ever bowed to a younger species. "The Union is failing without you." "We know," said Chen, gesturing to a wall of monitors displaying real-time data from across Union space. "We've been watching the collapse. It's happening faster than even we predicted." "Will you help us?" asked Sorix, the question painful for the proud Vrexian to voice. What would it take for humanity to return? Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. "We're not interested in retribution or dominance. What we want is simple: recognition and equality." She activated a holographic display showing a new structure for the Galactic Union, one where power was distributed based on contribution rather than age, where innovation was valued over tradition, where all species had an equal voice regardless of how long they had traveled the stars. "This is our proposal," she said. "A new union, built on mutual respect rather than hierarchical tradition." For the elder races, it was a radical restructuring of the order they had maintained for millennia. It would mean surrendering privileges they had long taken for granted, acknowledging the worth of younger species not just in words, but in genuine power sharing. Zorix looked at his fellow representatives, seeing in their eyes the same calculation he was making. The choice was stark: accept a new order or watch the old one collapse completely. "We will need to consult with our governments," he said finally. Chen nodded. "Of course. But understand this. We're not returning to the old arrangement. Either the Union evolves, or it dies. And humanity will not be blamed for its death." As the Union delegation prepared to depart, Dr. Okafor approached them with a small device. "This will stabilize your ships for the return journey," he said, handing it to their chief engineer. "And this data crystal contains emergency protocols to temporarily stabilize the critical systems throughout Union space. It will buy you about 3 months, enough time to make your decision." The gesture was both generous and pointed, a reminder of human ingenuity and compassion, freely given even now. The return journey was silent, each representative contemplating the implications of what they had witnessed. Humanity had not only survived without the Union, they had thrived. Meanwhile, the mighty elder races were facing existential crisis after just 6 months without human innovation. When they returned to Union space, the delegation found conditions had deteriorated even further. The emergency protocols provided by the humans were implemented immediately, bringing temporary relief to the failing systems. An extraordinary session of the full Union Assembly was called. For 7 days, representatives from all member species debated the human proposal. Traditional factions argued for finding alternatives, for developing their own technologies, for somehow managing without human assistance. Progressive voices countered that the evidence was irrefutable. The Union needed humans more than humans needed the Union. On the 8th day, the vote was taken. By a narrow margin, the Assembly approved the restructuring. The Galactic Union would transform itself according to the human proposal, dismantling millennia of hierarchical tradition in favor of a more egalitarian structure. 1 year after their abrupt departure, humans began returning to Union space, not as supplicants or second-class citizens, but as equal partners in galactic civilization. They brought with them new technologies, innovative solutions to long-standing problems, and a fresh perspective that revitalized stagnant institutions. The elder races, initially resentful of their diminished status, gradually came to recognize the benefits of the new arrangement. Innovation flourished as species previously marginalized found their contributions valued. Collaborative projects yielded breakthroughs that no single species could have achieved alone. On the anniversary of the human silence, a new monument was unveiled on Harmonium Prime. A simple holographic display showed a human hand and a Vrexian hand clasped together, with the words, "Progress comes not from age, but from wisdom. Wisdom comes not from longevity, but from learning. The greatest lesson is this: every voice matters." The galaxy had driven humans away through arrogance and dismissal. Their desperate regret had led to a painful but necessary evolution. And in that evolution, both humanity and the elder races had found something better than dominance. They had found partnership.